Curtis, thank you so much for joining me for a few minutes. Congratulations on Butterfly. How are you
Thank you
feeling
very
about the
much.
series?
I love the series. It's so much fun. It's love, it's relationships, it's action, it's all sorts of different things that you don't usually get together in this combination. And I think it's just fantastic. It was such a fun series to compose.
So, where was your approach for this series? Because we know kind of some of the familiar sounds we hear when we get to a thriller like that, when chases are happening or gun battles are happening, tense moments. There's a lot of familiar sounds that we're used to getting. Where was your approach to this series?
Right from the jump, Daniel Day Kim really set the tone. He sent over some references of Korean folk music and then some like piano trio music. And immediately we knew that this was going to go in a different direction musically than something you would normally get with spy thriller. And from there, we just wanted to make it our own and really wanted to give the show a unique sonic identity musically. And so there was a lot of research that went into Korean music and but also Japanese and Chinese music, that whole sort of region of the world, and we came up with some sounds that seemed to really stick. One of which was the kotsuzumi drum, which is this like you put on your shoulder. It's pitch drum, sort of like a talking drum, and that became the sound for Rebecca's theme. And then once we had that, everything else just kind of was extracted from basically the sounds you hear in the main theme. Uh, and we wanted to do action in a slightly different way, not as many, drones or pulsing elements, but really more kind of organic textures. That was a word that was used a lot at the start of the show, was just organic, wanted it to feel natural, wanted it to feel like of the place because it's all shot in Seoul, but not, you know, Korean music, necessarily a hybrid action. Min and I really brought a lot into that. So yeah, that was the angle that we took.
So, and this is one of my favorite things to chat with composers about is sometimes you jump into a project and you're given the challenge of maybe doing the research or discovering sounds from a region maybe you haven't worked with. For
Mhm.
you personally, what was it like to dive into some of those Korean sounds, especially like that drum that you mentioned that you guys really liked for the theme?
Yeah, I think we knew that we weren't going to go and record like a traditional Korean folk ensemble playing these instruments, and so we wanted to do it in a way that the did Korean music justice, but also felt um, like it was coming out of the show. And I think one of the key moments was taking a sort of sampling approach to it, not in sense of small bits, but like a hip hop sampling approach of like we took that Korean pitch drum and then we sort of warped it and changed it and then took it so that you could play it all over the keyboard, like an 808 or anything like that. And once we did that, we started doing that with other elements. There's a lot of really great like high metallic piercing sounds, and we did the same thing. We used a lot of like not traditional sort of sonic manipulation on these things because we could never hope to be Korean musicians, and so we just wanted to do something that felt like us, that felt like the show, but also had a new spin to it.
Can you walk me through a little bit of your workflow? Because I mean, I'm always impressed with the way that you are able to. I mean, you're just talking about it take sounds. Maybe you and I, we all hear them one way, but you specifically doing that this is what you do, you
Mm-hmm.
can also hear them in differently or ways that they could be, but you obviously have to work with them. So tell me a little bit about your workflow with sounds in particular and how you're able to really find them because I find that fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of experimentation. And luckily, we found out that we'd be doing the show in around, I first heard about it in February of last year, and then we really got going in May. And our first recording session with the orchestra in Budapest wasn't until September. So there was just a lot of time to try things and experiment. And okay, what if we did this? What if we pitched it down? What if we compressed it a ton? And I think as you're going through that, what I try to do is just listen and just wait for the moment where you flip a knob and then you're like, oh, wait, hold on, that sounds amazing. Let's use that. And then you just do that, 10 or 20 times, and suddenly you have a bit of a palette. And then when it comes to the scoring, you using those sounds and applying them dramatically where they feel like they need to go. But sometimes the approach is, in the case of David and Rebecca's kind of like father-daughter theme, the sort of more emotional side of the score, that was just a lot of sitting around the piano, just, tinkering with things, waiting for something to catch. It's like you're just fishing and kind of you feel a tug, and then you follow that line. Yeah, and just a lot of do-overs and reinterpretations and just experimentation, and having that much time was such a gift because I think we really landed in a place that felt true to the show.
Well, you talked a little bit about that, but I was really curious in developing a sound for David in particular. He's a veteran. He's a father. He's coming back in the picture. He's wanted. Can you talk to me about some of the sounds that resonated with you for his character?
Yeah, David, he's so multidimensional. He's such a twofold character in so many ways. And the main way we tried to get at that was having this same notes, same theme. But there's moments where he's just being such a badass, and you have the brass, and it's just like full and playing his theme. But then he's also a searcher and a planner, and he's kind of that guy who's always one step ahead. And so we wanted there to be an element of like, the yarn unraveling, the kind of plan coming together. And so you have some moments with him where you have these sort of glass sounds and bell sounds, this idea of like his mind is at work. And then you just have other moments where it's just like pure power and these huge brass hits. And this dude is just, he's a veteran spy. He knows the lay of the land better than anybody else.
Yeah, because he's such a multi-layered character. That's why I asked. You talked
Mm,
about him as the badass spy that he is, and then also we see so many moments throughout the series where he's also a very just caring father,
yeah.
husband, to almost two different families, kind of. With Rebecca. Speaking of her, let's talk a little bit about her theme and where she comes in because where we pick up she finds out her dad's alive. She starts questioning things. She's also pretty really really good agent as well.
Yeah, I was at a screening the other night, and Raina, who plays Rebecca, was talking about her interpretation of the character was that she's someone who at every moment is figuring out what she wants to do and figuring out who she is. And separate from David, who's planning and he's got everything laid out and he's got this, his plan gets interrupted by various forces, but he's got the sort of bird's eye view. She's just so in the moment and raw, whether it's her fighting or whether it's, her confronting these emotions about her dad coming back into her life. So her theme, we just wanted it to be just like brute power and force and kind of, in the first episode when she has that elevator fight, just the energy of that. And so that's where that Kotsuzumi, the pitch drum, really came in. And we just felt like it was the perfect sound for her kind of like aggressive, not really thinking too much about it. David's more of the thinker. She's just kind of who do I need to take out and where are they? And, I'm gonna go get them, that sort of attitude.
Was really really well done. I'm enjoying the series quite a bit. I think I have one or two more episodes to go before, so
Cool.
it's been fun. I can't let you go without talking a little bit about your background. I mean, you had a mentorship really with Michael Giacchino, who
Hmm.
did Up. I mean, just I remember recently going into, I don't remember, it wasn't recently because Disney stores don't really exist as much anymore. But walking in one of those stores and just hearing that sound and just like it resonating so hard,
Hmm.
and then going through the entire first few scenes of the film are just feeling crappy because that's one of my favorite scores and just movies because of it. And working with Zootopia, and then you get to also do Doug Days, and then Zootopia Plus, which was so fun. Tell me a little bit of some of the things that stuck with you and are now part of your regimen after working with him.
Story first. Story, 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 story. No matter, we've talked a lot about cool sounds and how to sonically interpret the fabric of a show, but you have to be in lockstep with the characters, with the emotion, and with the audience. I think that was my main takeaway from years of working with Michael. And I started out getting coffee at his recording sessions, and then I was organizing some old scores that he had and started orchestrating and then arranging and then doing additional music. So I really had a journey with him and got to see the process done over and over and over again at the just he's I think he's the best of the best, and I couldn't and he was such a guiding light on this project too, producing the score, advising on so many different levels, but just his understanding and ability to execute musically storytelling, I think is just unparalleled. And that's always top of my list when it comes to a scene or an episode or a movie is just how do we effectively tell this story? Because we're filmmakers too. We're not just musicians. And I think you have to think that way in order to do this effectively.
I mean, you are because I talked with Cameron Moody who did Washington Black recently, and we talked really about how if you take away the score to any film or any TV show, you kind of really lose soul of it. Because yes, action is great. We love it. We love also just regular sounds of bullets and things and grunts. But the music really dictates tempo. It dictates really how I should be feeling. A great example of it, one of my favorites, of course, is always, and for many people, is Jaws. You don't see anything, but the score is the one that's telling you how you need to feel. You're just looking at water, if you really think about it. But the score is telling you how to feel, and I feel like you have a great understanding of it based on just our conversation, just what you're saying now. If you put the story first, I feel like we're in for a good ride.
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility. And John Williams talks about that he's the emotional interpreter of any given film. And so there's a lot of pressure on your shoulders to do it in a way that feels like you're telling the most effective story to the audience and that you're not pulling things out that you don't need to, and you're highlighting the right things. It's shades. There's so many allegories, painting and uh but at the heart of it, it's just there's in a scene there can be a million things going on, but you kind of have to lock in on, okay, what is at the heart of this action scene. There's so many action scenes like this in Butterfly where is it really about the action? Is it just the thumping drums? No, it's David. He's trying to get Rebecca. There's love, there's fatherhood, there's all these different things. So how do you do both at the same time? So it's a lot of juggling. I think it's just turning the dials on the different emotions and the different character moments.
Well, now that you mention it, I'm going to ask you, what was it like to score that opening scene? That opening scene where you're really setting the tone for everything that we're going to see.
It was so fun. It was the first thing we did. We scored the first 15 minutes and presented it to Daniel and Ken Woodruff, showrunner, and Steph Cha, executive producer and writer of the show, and used it as an opportunity similar to the main theme, but as a way to figure out our palette, to figure out, okay, what are the emotional musical tools that we're going to use in the show. And that first sequence, it just is nonstop. It just is like the greatest. It just takes me back to the Bourne movies, and Skyfall is one of my favorite spy thrillers. Oh, there's my dog. But yeah, it was just electric. And after that, I think, like I said before, everything for the rest of the score came out of that, the opening sequence. I mean, you pretty much hear all the themes. You hear David and Rebecca's theme, you hear Rebecca's theme, you hear David's planning theme, David's sort of fatherhood theme. It's all there. It's like this really, really condensed microcosm for the rest of the show.
You know, it's interesting. Anytime I talk with composers, and recently I've been doing it a lot, it's so much fun. Um, I watch the series of the movie and just really listen in and think I have it all, and then I have this conversation, and now I need to go back and watch that sequence all over again to see if I can catch a couple more of those elements that you're talking about, because it is incredible how much you can put into the music when it comes
Yeah.
to a scene like that. Curtis, thank you so much for a few minutes of your time. I appreciate it. Thank you for
Thank
the
you so
insight
much.
on Butterfly, and hopefully we chat again. As always, like I said, it's such a privilege for me to get an insight on your work. So thank you for a few minutes.
Thank you.